Hello, welcome to my latest video, and thank you to everybody who's subscribed to me so far. I'm making another video today, and what we're going to be talking about is Albert Einstein. So Albert Einstein is frequently cited by theists, Christians, mainly Christians actually, as somebody who believed in God. Now, to what extent is this true? Because Einstein is often cited as an authority, and it's not unusual for people to say, for example, well, if Einstein believed in God, that's enough for me, which of course, as we know, is a logical fallacy because it's an argument from authority. And although Einstein was a great physicist and a great scientist, there's no reason why we should accept his view on the existence of God. So what exactly was Einstein's belief about God? Because he wrote quite a lot. He was interviewed several times. But reading through what he's written, I can see how Christians could quote out of context and cherry pick using certain quotations or phrases to solidify their own arguments by referring to Einstein's supposed belief in God. Just to illustrate, I've found something here. I've found several quotations which I'm going to read out, and I'd like you to concentrate and focus on them. It's worth it because obviously, Einstein's actually, I can't comprehend anything of what Einstein says about physics. Of course not, but I can comprehend when he's talking about religion. So in 1930, Einstein was asked if he's a pantheist. Pantheism, I'm sure you all know this anyway, but I'll say it, is effectively that the whole of nature, or the whole of the existence which manifests before us, is synonymous with God. So let me just read this, though, because I think that it will demonstrate quite well how much cherry picking Christians can do. But not only that, the way that Einstein frames things, the whole rhetoric is actually what you would actually hear Christians using. The language that he uses is very religious. So I'm just going to go through what he says here. He's asked in 1930, are you a pantheist? He says, it is not a question I can answer simply with yes or no. I am not an atheist. So we've got there, he's not an atheist. Of course, this could be taken out of context. In 1930, Einstein said he was not an atheist. That's not in dispute. He said he's actually recorded saying, I'm not an atheist. I do not know if I can define myself as a pantheist. The problem involved is too vast for our limited minds. Now you get what I'm saying here about the rhetoric. You hear this from Christians. You hear it from people like Ray Comfort. It's almost like they've actually used Einstein as an inspiration, linguistically speaking. Semantically, linguistically, they've used him as an inspiration for their own rhetoric. Repeat it. The problem involved is too vast for our limited minds. You often hear this from religious people. You know, the order behind the universe is so vast that our puny human minds can't comprehend it. So we've got to believe in God as an explanation for everything. Okay. See the problem here? And then Einstein goes on. May I not reply with a parable? Okay, here's the parable. The human mind, no matter how highly trained, cannot grasp the universe. We are in the position of a little child entering a huge library whose walls are covered to the ceiling with books in many different tongues. The child knows that someone must have written those books. Have you recognized that? It's the watchmaker argument. It does not know how or who. It does not understand the languages in which they are written. The child notes a definite plan in the arrangements of the books, a mysterious order which it does not comprehend but only dimly suspects. That, it seems to me, is the attitude of the human mind, even the greatest and most cultured, toward God. We see a universe marvelously arranged, obeying certain laws, but we understand the laws only dimly. Our limited minds cannot grasp the mysterious force that sways the constellations. Okay, end of quote. Now you see the problem there. It leads on automatically to our limited minds cannot grasp, blah, blah, blah. Therefore, make the logical connection. We need an explanation. We need an explanation. And theists will say that explanation is God. And I suppose Einstein would say that science is trying to unravel all the mysteries of the universe. And there's a long, long way to go. But even then, we will still never get there. We will still not understand. We still will not understand the whole picture, almost ever. That there will always be that degree of mystery. Now, a Christian will turn around and say, yes, and that mystery is God. But Einstein goes on then, and he says, my views are near those of Spinoza. Admiration for the beauty of and belief in the logical simplicity of the order, which we can grasp humbly and only imperfectly. I believe that we have to content ourselves with our imperfect knowledge and understanding and treat values and moral obligations as a purely human problem. So there you have it. He's talking in 1930, of course. And so, yeah, the God of Spinoza. And for Spinoza, everything is substance, and that substance is God. Nature is composed of substance, the same thing as God, but God is greater than nature. So I got that from here, by the way. This is my little book on philosophy. It's great on definitions and pocket explanations. I hope I got that more or less right, by the way. But I already did understand something of Spinoza's God. So yeah, he's saying in 1930 that he's close to if there is a God, or if he is a theist, then it's Spinoza's God, which actually, let's face it, is no God at all. Because when we're talking about God, strictly speaking, we're talking about the arguments between Christians and theists and Islam, etc. Let's face it, it's really about the God of classical theism, the monotheistic God, even the personal God. Now, I know that a lot of the arguments, like the Kalam cosmological argument and causation argument and various other teleological, ontological arguments, they don't define, they don't establish if one accepts their validity. The Christian God as such, it's only a starting point for theism, because they don't really go very far, even if you accept them. But it's clear from what Einstein said, despite the rhetoric, which sounds actually very theistic and very Christian, a lot of what he says about our puny... I've actually heard Ray Comfort say, our puny minds cannot grasp the magnificence of the cosmos, and therefore we need God. It's the same rhetoric, and Einstein was using it in the 30s. I don't know, maybe he invented it, and Christians and theists have now plagiarized him. So yeah, he says my views are near those of Spinoza. But he said that in 1930. There was then somebody that put around a rumor that he'd seen a Jesuit priest, and one of Einstein's admirers wrote to him and said, "Mr. Einstein, is it true that I understand you've seen a Jesuit priest and you're going to convert? And I'm just writing to you to say I'm surprised and disappointed." Einstein replied and said, well, this is typical of the lies that are being used by certain groups to promote their own cause. And he said, of course, in relation to it, he said, first of all, it's not true. And I said, of course, in relation to a Jesuit priest, I'm an atheist. Now, that's the only time, as far as I know, that Einstein actually admitted to being an atheist. But he's saying in relation to a Jesuit priest, in other words, a believer in the Trinity, Jesus Christ, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and all the rest of the Christian doctrine. He is an atheist. He doesn't believe in He doesn't believe in the personal God. He doesn't believe in the God of Christianity. He doesn't believe in the Abrahamic God. He's called it childish. And so he's also criticized atheists, again, something which has been seized upon by Christians and other theistic groups as evidence for his theism. Because after all, who is now criticizing atheists? Theists are criticizing atheists. And what he says here, he says it in correspondence to somebody. He calls them fanatical. The fanatical atheists are like slaves who are still feeling the weight of their chains, which they have thrown off after a hard struggle. They are creatures who, in their grudge against the traditional opium of the people, he's quoting Marx there, cannot hear the music of the spheres. So there we have it. That could easily be interpreted as Einstein the theist condemning atheists because they can't see the poetry in existence, and you can only see the poetry in existence through God. You can almost make that step as a Christian from what he's saying here, that he's condemning the atheists. And actually, again, we've got this rhetoric at the moment about the angry atheists. So it's interesting that even in the 30s there were angry atheists around, and I'm an angry atheist. There are angry atheists now, and there were angry atheists then. Of course, there were angry atheists 300 years ago, but they were clever enough to keep their mouths shut. And then he says something interesting. He says, so Einstein then says, straight after this, although he did not believe in a personal God, he indicated that he would never seek to combat such belief, because such a belief seems to me preferable to the lack of any transcendental outlook. Wow. So there is Einstein, and that's 1955. He devised something which he called the cosmic religion, and effectively it's based on Spinozas God. But he takes a kind of poetic, spiritual view of the cosmos and everything wonderful that's in it and the mystery behind it. The mystery, of course, which science is unraveling, but which he says will never be complete. There will always be that element of mystery. It will always be imperfect. And he's talking about, for him, dry atheism, rejection of rejection of the transcendental. In other words, anything that goes beyond the material world. That belief in a personal God is actually is preferable. The reason he does not attack theists of classical theism is because he thinks that belief in a personal God is actually preferable to the rejection of transcendence, or the rejection of anything that could be beyond nature. So, and he wrote that in 1955, obviously closer to the end of his life, and it would be easier for Christians to seize on that and say, well, he was moving towards our position. So I would say to you that I don't think he ever made that step, and I don't think that he was ever going to, even if he lived for another 100 years. He developed this thing called cosmic religion, which is unfortunate in many ways because it feeds into the whole rhetoric, and Christians will say, well, he had his religion, he was a religious man, and he was coming around to our way of thinking. He needed to make one or two more steps, and he would have been there at belief in the personal God, but he didn't live long enough. So I think it's quite problematic. It's problematic not because Einstein did not reject the gods that we're talking about, the Christian God, the Abrahamic gods. Not for that reason, but because of the rhetoric, because of the way he framed what he was saying. And he's often quoted out of context. And he puts a lot of emphasis on us being inadequate to comprehend the enormity of the cosmos. So I can see why so often he's been quoted out of context, and why a lot of theists regard him as a friend to their own cause, while disagreeing with them, first of all, because it's a logical fallacy. And okay, so Einstein is one of the great intellects of the 20th century, maybe the greatest scientist of the 20th century. He probably was. But that doesn't mean that what he has got to say about religion should have any more validity, really, than anybody else. Because if we're talking about a transcendental, supernatural God, we're all in the dark together. We've got no means of investigating that, and it's all down to belief and faith. So we've got Francis Collins, we've got incredibly clever people who are around now. If you want to refer to an authority, well, refer to Francis Collins. He was head of the Human Genome Project. If you want to commit a logical fallacy, there's no need to refer back to Einstein. You can refer to somebody who has got all the benefit of DNA evidence and all the science that has come after Einstein, and yet he believes in the Trinity because he saw a fountain in 3 columns and he hit his knees and converted from atheism to Christianity. So if you want to engage in fallacies, then just refer to Francis Collins. There are plenty. There's no shortage of scientists around who are Christians or Catholics. Okay, they're in a minority. I know I've seen. I don't want to start arguing from authority myself, but if you want to play that game, then I think it's 5 or 7% of top scientists are Christians. Well, that's fair enough. But if you want to find incredibly intelligent people, scientists who understand a lot about physics and biology, etc., who believe in God, yeah, they exist. And if Einstein had come out and said that he was a Christian and he converted to Catholicism, it would make no difference to me. Christians would be fallaciously referring to him and arguing from authority. But for me, it would remain a fallacy, and it would make absolutely no difference to my worldview and to my atheism. But not everybody's like that. You could go into a pub and somebody will say, well, somebody might step forward. There's an argument on religion. You realize that Einstein believed in God and that he condemned atheists. You realize that, don't you? And people say, is that right? Is that true? Einstein believed in God. I thought he was an atheist. No, he believed in God. And unless there's somebody there to say, well, actually, it's a bit more complex than that. It was Spinozas God. Unless there's somebody there to explain it, people accept things very easily. They accept a lot, not everybody, of course. A lot of people accept things, ideas and propositions on the say-so, on the hearsay of another person. They could literally use that instead of doing their own research. They, oh yes, John said that Einstein was a believer. Can you believe it? Yeah, no, it's true, honestly. Oh, was he? And then it starts going. You see how it can happen. And this is one of the reasons that so many Christians and theists believe that Einstein actually was a theist too, that he was believed in the God of classical theism, might have even been somebody who was about to convert. And they think he's a friend to their religion, when in truth he isn't at all. Just because they've not taken the trouble to do the research and find out what he really said and in what context. But this is part of what's happening on debates online, not just online, but I notice even in newspapers, in The Guardian, for example, I've seen Einstein often misquoted on religion, and it freaks me out. I've stopped correcting it because it happens so often that I'm just getting tired of doing it. And I probably should just to I probably should actually correct people, but there's only so much time in the day, and it usually leads to an unproductive argument anyway. So I tend not to get involved in things. If I see conversations going on in newspaper comments columns, misquotes, etc. I tend not to get involved in it because it's more often than not, it's unproductive. It's usually a diehard Christian that's made the comment, and there'll be a lot of ad hominem attacks. Oh, you're one of those you're one of those angry atheists, are you? You know what I mean. So, just to conclude, then, so we were asking, are Christians justified in using Albert Einstein quotations and beliefs in order to support their own theism? And what I've argued is that he used a lot of religious rhetoric, which is quoted out of context. Nevertheless, but which does sound very theistic when you read it even now, and is repeated and has been adopted. I mentioned Ray Comfort. There are many others that have used the kind of language that Einstein used. But that nevertheless, Einstein asserted so many times that he did not believe in the personal God. He said he wasn't an atheist on the one hand, but said that he was close to Spinozas God on the other, which to me de facto makes him an atheist, really, in the way that I mean it, which is that he does not believe in the God of classical theism. He does not believe in any kind of God which is beyond. For me, I think that he does not believe in any kind of God which is beyond the material world, essentially. And he's talking about effectively nature being God, which I always think that if nature is God, or if the universe is God, why do you need to give the universe another name? Why not just call it the universe? So to me, Einstein was an atheist. I don't care that he said he wasn't an atheist. He did admit it in that letter about the Jesuit priest. He said that he's an atheist in relation to the Jesuit priest, and that's good enough for me. But I can understand why a lot of Christians, theists, Muslims will seize upon many of the statements that Einstein has made to support their own beliefs, and also in conflict with atheists will use Einstein, which they shouldn't do really, because any atheist worth his salt on YouTube or anywhere else really will be able to rebut what they're saying. First of all, because it's a logical fallacy, and secondly, because Einstein was an atheist and he didn't believe in the personal God. He did not believe in the God of classical theism. Well, I think I'm starting to repeat myself now, so I think that is more or less conclusively proven. Make your comments. Have you got anything to add? Do you think I've missed something? Have I made any mistakes? Or do you disagree? Maybe you think that Einstein was more of a theist than I've given him credit. I don't know. But subscribe to my channel if you can, because the more subscribers I get, the more I feel like making videos. And if you enjoy watching them, I'll be happy to make them. So, well, that's all for now, and look forward to seeing you with the video again fairly soon.